Welcome to the Hall of Echoes of the Grand Library of the city of Zahra. This is where reports arrive of discoveries, expeditions, and events already shaping the world. Some are confirmed, others survive only through witness. I am Idris Nahir, Keeper of Echoes. I mark what is known and I name what is uncertain, because silence is also a choice. These are the matters before Zahra.
Today has been most auspicious. What we will uncover here today may very well alter the paradigm of our city. This symposium might be one of the most impactful I've done in recent years. There's been a murder in the city, one that many of you might remember hearing about all throughout the streets. On top of that, the saga of missing Ramza al-Shakir comes to an end. She's been found safe and unharmed, though I have scarce details to share with you today. The library is actively working to obtain information about her whereabouts and how she was recovered. The moment we have that within our grasp, we will share everything we know. That is a promise. While this is exciting news for everyone, there has been no evidence yet that Ramza was linked to other missing kinfolk. Investigations are still underway, and Basim al-Shakir has been intent on keeping Ramza from overwhelming herself, so she's not given any official statements. But right now, the priority with this symposium is regarding the death of a high-ranking member of the Banu Asrar. Almost 1 week ago today, screams were heard throughout the streets of Zahra as a body was discovered hanging in the courtyard near Union Square. Healers performed an investigative autopsy on the body and discovered it was moved after the death and hung within the courtyard. They were killed prior to being moved with a dagger stabbed through their chest. Many believe moving the body to be a gruesome display. It's not beyond our understanding for the kinfolk of the Banu Asrar to send a message with their murders, so perhaps whoever is responsible for this might have been doing the same. But what message exactly is yet to be uncovered, especially as we know the body was burnt. That is an unusual practice in and of itself, unless one has something to hide, of course. If you want my opinion, and I dare say you might if you are gathered here, I believe the body was burnt to keep the Ruad al-Majur from summoning the spirit of the deceased. A judge of the tribunal of redress would be a powerful spirit, I'm sure. If that was not a concern, hiding the identity of the killer certainly was. The body was discovered with the gold-plated mask of Judge Witness still attached to the head. Many of the onlookers who discovered the body early in the morning wished to unveil the face of the dead. We have all often wondered who sat on the infamous tribunal of the Banu Asrar and brought down judgment upon others. Investigators deemed it too incendiary to unveil that information at this time. The true name of the judge remains a secret even to someone with the reach I have. Those of the Banu Asrar tend to keep their lips sealed with matters such as these, otherwise they might befall a similar fate. Much of the city is worried about what this means. The judges of the Banu Asrar have long been hidden. Their true identity is a secret to all of the city. All we know of them was their titles and that they remain in the shadows, raining down justice on all who would seek to ignore it for their own means. But now, a death and public display such as this is sending many of our kinfolk into a spiral. No matter who has climbed the ranks of power within our city, there has always been one constant. No matter what happens among the powerful, there is always the Banu Asrar to keep them in balance. What are the common folk of the city supposed to do if the Banu Asrar are in disarray and unable to help? Could all hope truly be lost? I'm sure many of you remember Zumra of the Veiled Chamber, Mother of Quiet Doors, wife of Mardin Lantern Keeper, and what became of her. Several weeks ago, Zumra was killed. It caused quite a stir among the aristocracy as she was a prominent member of the Veiled Chamber. but the events leading up to her death were suspicious to say the least. If you'll all recall weeks ago, we introduced a new tribe into our ranks, the Veilish. Their lands had come undone due to the third signs of the old gods, and they fled to our great city for protection. Ever since finding refuge within our walls, many of them have been working closely with the Dwarven Labor Union to learn new trades, as well as exchanging relics from their lands for fulgurite. But as there were so many of them coming to our city, and simply not enough work for them all at the time, many of them have been relying on aid from members of the Hallowed and Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony. You wonder why this is important to mention now of all times. Well, Zumra had a penchant for philanthropy. At least that was the perception of her, as she volunteered her time and wealth to help refugees situate themselves within the city. But now, something sinister has come to light. A group of refugees, many of whom were of the Veilish tribe, were poisoned several weeks ago. One family died of the sickness that struck them, while many others were left hospitalized to recover. The root of that poisoning was traced back to a batch of lentils that had been donated. These lentils were cooked by none other than Zumra herself. Many of the families of those refugees sought justice against her and the Veiled Chamber, but the Veiled Chamber refused to hear any of their cases. I'm sure all of you know how the rest of this story is going to go. Justice was sought for the crime Zumra committed against the refugees. She was killed alongside her children at the hands of the Banu Asrar. We know this thanks to Royal Society scholars hired by Mardin Lantern Keeper to investigate his family's deaths. In the wake of Judge Witness's murder, more has come to light. But before we begin, I shall share with you some other goings-on within the city. The Veiled Chamber has released a public statement. You can find their exact words plastered along the walls of the city. But they are sticking to their story that Zumra was not tasked with this poisoning by their own ranks, which many have believed to be the case. She was a bad apple among the bunch and has always been, according to the Veiled Chamber spokesperson. The Hallowed and the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony have been working closely with the Barakin to purchase many barrels of beetles. After the lentils were poisoned, there is distrust about their safety. The beetles are an incredible source of protein the Barakin have used for generations, and they hope they will keep the refugees fed. The Dwarven Labor Union, thanks to the aid of the Storm Shapers Collective, have identified the poison used in the lentils and are working closely with herbalists to administer tinctures to cure the sick. Illuminated petal bards have been wandering the city singing ballads of Zumra of the Veiled Chamber, the cruel poisoner. I've heard a few myself, and while the accounts of Zumra's cruelty are at this point unsubstantiated, the ballads are beautiful in their own right. But I'll not tempt you to leave me now and find them to listen for yourself. Now I shall begin with the documents of today's symposium, but I'll warn you, news will be uncovered that might unsettle you greatly. I know it did for me. Journal of Kasha of the Other's Hand, Scion of Justice. Of course, I heard about Zumra's death just like everyone else in the city. I was intrigued by it because I knew Zumra to be one of the few kind members of the Veiled Chamber. But I suppose, if I'm given to believe the stories, I can never make a mistake that anyone from the Veiled Chamber is capable of kindness again. But could she really poison those refugees? She had spent so long trying to help them. She donated her own fulgurite, her own time. It would not be too far out of the realm of the Veiled Chamber's cruelty to set up a story as detailed as this one. Earn the trust of the refugees and take advantage of them so the poor are disadvantaged even more than they once were. The Other's Hand is particularly interested in the relics gifted to Zumra. The refugees that she helped were always thankful, so they gifted her relics all the time. But now that she has betrayed them, we're going to get them back. The Banu Asrar might have gotten justice for the kinfolk who were nothing but victims of her cruelty. But we can give back too. We can give the refugees what was once theirs, what should still belong to them. But of course, the Banu Asrar is not forthcoming with the relics they were given. Justice, in their eyes, is not free. Dozens of relics were stolen from Zumra's estate and taken over by the Banu Asrar as payment for their counsel. So that's what I am after. I need to know exactly what was taken from Zumra so I know what I'm looking for when I eventually break into the Banu Asrar's vaults. They have so many artifacts, they'll never even notice these ones missing. I just need to make sure I don't take anything too conspicuous. The Banu Asrar used one of their trackers to investigate the case, Hanan al-Mog, Lightstep. He's one of the many kinfolk the Banu Asrar used to verify testimonies given to their tribunal. At some point, I heard they used him for his discretion, but finding him was surprisingly easy. Perhaps if I grow tired of the other's hand, I might consider becoming a tracker myself. I certainly know how to use more discretion than Hanan seems to. Right now, I don't know the extent of all that is going on, but I do know that something serious is afoot. Hanan did not return home today. I waited hours outside for any sign of him, but it never came. In desperate need of information and with time running short, I did the only thing I could think of. I lockpicked my way into his home. If there is one thing we can say about the Banu Asrar, is that they keep meticulous records of their crimes. That is extended to the investigators of their cases. I found the documents of this investigation hidden in his home just waiting to be stolen. I am hoping that within these documents, I'll be able to find information about these relics. But I would be lying if I said my curiosity is not piqued by this investigation. I don't know if I necessarily believe that Zumra is a killer, but if something happened to Hanan during the investigation, it might have everything to do with her trial. I'm eager to sink my teeth into it all. Case number 281, Notes, Day 1. Signed by Hanan al-Mag of the Banu Asrar, Lightstep. Formal complaint lodged against one Zumra of the Veiled Chamber, Mother of Quiet Doors, wife of Mardin Lantern Keeper, by Rina Baim of the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony, devoted monk. It is alleged that Zumra knowingly poisoned a batch of lentils cooked and served to a group of refugees, dining after a learning session provided by the Kinship and the Hollow to instruct them on our language. Zumra maintains that she had nothing to do with the poison, insisting she cared deeply for the refugees. The poison was discovered by one Yarik of the Stormshapers Collective. It was first believed that the deaths were due to a batch of bad crop from the Stormshaper farms. The collective have maintained they adhere to the highest standards and would never sell any crop they deem subpar. Through the use of grammaturgy, Yarik was able to trace lethal amounts of nightshade sublimate to the lentils. Interviews have been conducted with several witnesses present at the scene of the crime. Members of the Kinship and the Hollow tell me that Zumra brought the lentils herself and cooked them in the kitchen as she always did to serve them. There was ample opportunity to slip the poison into the food as he cooked. I was unable to find anyone who would come to Zumra's defense. For obvious reasons, I cannot speak to her or her loved ones directly. A contact within the Veiled Chamber, however, tells me that she has always been on the outside. They did not suspect this is something she would have done easily, but she has always been unpredictable, so they could not say for certain it is out of her character. As of this moment, there is opportunity present, but a lacking motive. It is my suspicion that there might be more to uncover through this investigation. At this moment, I do not deem Zumra guilty of her crimes. nor is she innocent. A formal judgment will be given to the tribunal once enough information is uncovered. Until then, I shall remain investigating. Banu Asrar, Tribunal of Redress, Case Number 281, Hearing Summary. The Tribunal of Redress assembled at hour 2300 to hear the case brought against Zumra of the Veiled Chamber by Rina Baim of the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony. A case was presented to them that Zumra is responsible for poisoning a group of refugees with deadly nightshade sublimate that she slipped into cooked lentils. The tribunal listened intently, offering no action until an investigation has been completed. There are no witnesses to testify they saw Zumra administer the poison into the lentils. At this moment, it is Zumra's word against the others. An investigation has agreed to begin with one of the Banu Asrar's trackers to be dispatched at first light. Rina exited the Tribunal of Redress, and the masked judges continued their deliberation. It was the opinion of Judge Equity that should Zumra be found guilty of her crimes, she should be killed by the means of poison, just like the refugees who died at her hands. As an entire family was killed for the poison, her children should be killed alongside her. The only remaining member of her family should be her husband, left to mourn just as the husband of the refugee family was. All other judges were in agreement with the exception of Judge Witness. It was their opinion that Zumra might still be innocent, that the others were assuming guilt too easily. After all, lentils moved through many hands before passing through anyone's lips. Judge Witness suggested that perhaps it could be the fault of the farm, which was met with a quick rebuttal by Judge Equity that the Stormshapers Collective investigated and found poison. Judge Redress then suggested that actions like these are not beyond the realm of the Veiled Chamber's means. It is their view that there are too many refugees within the city already. With more always coming, the city will be overrun soon enough. Actions like these have historically unfolded at the hands of the Veiled Chamber attempting to control the masses, Judge Redress suggested. An argument thereafter unfolded between Judge Witness and Judge Redress. Judge Witness's position maintained that they cannot assume guilt, that in doing so they are no better than the others harming the common folk of the city. Judge Redress maintained that it wasn't an assumption, rather an educated guess. Judge Equity announced intent to vote for punishment should someone be found guilty. All but Judge Witness voted in favor of Judge Equity's suggestion to poison Zumra and her children. The official punishment shall be administered as soon as the Banu Asrar tracker returns with definitive evidence. Judge Redress called the meeting to an end and every judge exited the tribunal. Journal of Kasha of the Other's Hand, Scion of Justice. I now know why Hanan never returned home. He was killed. The investigation documents that I have are incomplete, I realize now. I only have a couple more documents to read through now, and skimming them already, I know there was no definitive conclusion about whether or not Zumra was guilty. This leads me to believe that there are more documents somewhere being hidden. Why? I haven't a clue. But the scene of Hanan's death was gruesome to say the least. I have no idea who could have been the killer behind this, but they knew very well what they were doing. The evidence of that being the vast amount of blood mold found at the scene. My position at the Adder's Hand does not typically deal with murder. I know very little about how to hide traces of my involvement in things that I do. The one thing I do know is that the amount of blood mold I saw at the scene of this crime means somebody was trying very hard to hide something. The investigator that I spoke with explained how it worked. When a kinfolk dies, the claustrum is weakened. That's how spirits move between our world and that of Mirelia where they rest. Normally, investigators have time to be at the scene of a crime and assess it. They can use occultism to uncover events leading up to a murder and find the killer. But they can only do that if the claustrum is weakened enough. Blood mold repairs the claustrum. They could not give me much information, but from what they did say, this means that someone intentionally increased the amount of blood mold growth at the scene of the crime to deter investigators from being able to reconstruct the events. Some kinfolk really understood how this investigation would work. They knew exactly what to target, and more importantly, they must have incredible arcane abilities if they can create so much blood mold in so little time. Whoever did this is powerful. Perhaps I should be watching my steps a little closer. After all, are relics within the vaults of some of the most dangerous peoples in the city really worth my life? The relics themselves are not, but I find myself drawn to this mystery in a way I can't quite explain. It beckons to me. All the pieces aren't adding up in the ways that they should. The Banu Asrar have been known for their justice for generations. But this case isn't as clear-cut as they would like it to be, that I know. With missing evidence, it's clear to me that there's something awry. It's my understanding that a bard from the Illuminated Petal has been hired to work this investigation now. The Illuminated Petal are always hungry for stories. I was already aware that several of them have been trying to get information about Zumra's death for their own ballads. But now one of them is going to be assessing the blood mold and making a unique painting of it. I am fascinated by the use of their abilities. From my understanding, some of these painters can use the spores of the blood mold to induce some sort of a trance that allows them to see the creator. I'm interested if that will uncover anything. But with this murder as well as Zumra's, kinfolk have been talking. Today I was walking through the spice market trying to gather any information I could. I found an old friend of mine, one of the Hoardkeeper wormlings, and spoke with him. Apparently, the river wardens believe that Zumra is innocent. Their claim is that the lintels brought to the kinship of the Chimes of Harmony passed through their hands first as a tax. The nightshade poison that was used was very lethal, which they believe means that it's unlikely Zumra would be able to administer as much as she did to harm as many kinfolk as she did without anybody noticing. They think the lintels were poisoned before they even crossed the river. If that is the case, then an innocent woman would have been killed. Is that a secret worth killing to protect? Case number 281. Notes. Day 2. Signed by Hanan al-Mag of the Banu Asrar, Lightstep. Today's investigation began with a questioning. I located several witnesses who were at the scene of Zumra's alleged crime for information. The following is a summary of an interview between myself and Aya Baskin of the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony, ascetic healer. I spoke to Aya in the courtyard and asked her questions about Zumra's involvement with her people. Aya had told me that Zumra had been visiting the refugees for years. At first, members of the kinship were happy that someone from the Veiled Chamber was offering kindness, as that's not something they're often inclined to do. Zumra was perceived as different from the others. She was soft-spoken, gentle, and she adored all of the children that came from lands all over. The refugees gifted her relics and homemade goods nearly every time she visited. She would often bring purses full of scarab shells to share as if it meant nothing to her. So Aya was just as shocked as all of the others when she learned that Zumra would betray their trust the way she did. Others have been skeptical of Zumra because of her connection to the Veiled Chamber, and Aya was always one to defend her. However, in the wake of these crimes, Aya looks back at all of the generous moments they shared more skeptically. What better way to get to the refugees to eat from the palms of their hands than to plant one of their own in their ranks? In hindsight, she thinks Zumra tried too hard to get to know them. Perhaps she was targeting a specific tribe that she deemed weaker. Other tribes that came to Zahra in the weeks after the Veilish had more success with physical labor than the Veilish did. The Veilish had heard rumors throughout the city that some thought they were relying too much on handouts. Perhaps that is why they were targeted specifically. Aya says that now she sees Zumra as who she really is, a despicable, bitter aristocrat who will someday get what is coming to her. Upon finishing our interview, Aya spit on the ground and walked away with a scowl on her face. It's clear to me now that members of the kinship are already on board with the idea that Zumra is guilty. Yet still, I have not seen any evidence to prove this. From the Journal of Hanan al-Mag of the Banu Asrar, Lightstep. I normally don't keep my own private journal while I investigate. I tend to want to keep all of my thoughts in the case notes, but this one is not adding up to me. I feel like there's some pieces missing that I need to put together. Truthfully, I don't see the motive Zumra would have to kill. That could be the piece that I'm missing now. But I have been investigating cases like this for decades, and I know how to follow my gut. Right now, my gut is telling me that I am not going to find anything to prove she is guilty. Whether that means she's good at covering her tracks or she's innocent, I don't know. But I don't know if it's enough to find her guilty. It's clear to me now that those in the veiled chamber did not think fondly of Zumra. She had been working with refugees and the poor for years. The moment she married her husband and moved out of her family home, she decided that she would use her resources to help others, unlike most other aristocrats in the Veiled Chamber. Perhaps there was a world where there was at least one good person among them. I'm sure the Chamber did not take kindly to that. It seems members of the kinship and the Hallowed believed that Zumra acted on the Chamber's behalf. Of course, there is no evidence to lead to that. The Chamber is also maintaining that they had no knowledge of whatsoever of her actions. As difficult as it is to admit, I believe them. If this is something that Zumra did, I don't know why the Chamber would be the ones to instigate it. They had very little trust with her, and it doesn't seem like Zumra would do something so harmful at the behest of the Chamber. The story is unclear to me now, but with every second I think about it, it unfolds a little more. I've always heard members of the Circle of 1,000 Threads speaking about the threads of fate they see before them. Right now, I feel as though I am among their ranks. I see the threads. I just need to figure out how to weave them all together. They've been walking around the city talking about how the threads are still open, that there's some sort of secrecy in the air. Normally, I don't know if I believe half of the stuff they spout out. But right now, I'm inclined to. There very well may be subversion taking place right before our eyes. I've long been hoping for a new title to add to my name. Thinking of uncovering this conspiracy now gives me ideas. But I think the one I like the most is Hanan al-Mag of the Banu Asrar, Lightstep, Truth Finder. I think that has a nice ring to it. Journal of Kasha of the Other's Hand, Scion of Justice. Visiting Mardin Lantern Keeper did not bring me much new information. I already knew that Zumra was killed by the Banu Asrar, as did everyone else in the city. Though he did share with me how that information was uncovered. He hired a Royal Society scholar who used forensic occultism to trace blood found under his son's fingernails back to the killer. Humoric resonance is what they call it. The science behind that is far beyond my understanding. But through the investigation of the crime scene, it was clear Zumra's son fought back against some form of intruder. We were told the entire family was killed by poison, but I suppose they did not ingest it. It was a needle that killed them after all. The son must have fought back, and that small amount of blood was enough to create a unique profile. They found that Jakin Ha'at of the Banu Asrar, Bloodhound, was responsible. To my knowledge, that information has not been spread throughout the city. The Bloodhound is a trained assassin after all. Anyone with knowledge of his whereabouts would likely be killed if he knew investigators were after him. Perhaps someday he'll be brought to justice of his own, but criminals in the Banu Asrar get away with this stuff all the time. After finishing with Mardin, I left to find the painter who is supposed to be learning from the blood mold. I don't know for certain that Zumra and Hanan's deaths are connected, but I have a hunch. Whenever I have those, I know to follow them. Efron is the painter's name. By the time I found him at the petaled stage, he was virtually gone. And I mean that spiritually and mentally. Physically, he was there. He was sitting by the painting, his hands held up against an array of crimson and red sprawled across it. I saw the blood mold with my own eyes, and the painting he recreated was nothing like it. It looked different, yet I could see the same things I felt standing before it. Fear, danger, curiosity. He opened his eyes when I approached, and I swear it was nothing like I'd ever seen in another kinfolk. They were blood red, like they'd morphed into the exact colors on the painting. I know now that he was in a trance, so deeply connected to the art that he made, he was practically living in the moment of that murder. I can't even imagine that horror. I had to wait a couple of hours for him to return. I just sat in the audience and watched. He mumbled under his breath, walked around, nearly stumbling off the stage several times. When he finally came back to himself, he told me what he saw. He saw Hanan's killer, at least a part of them. Their face was obscured, but they wore long grey robes. There's only one peoples within the city that don that particular fashion, the Hollowed. I nearly gasped when I made the connection. I never would have seen it coming. Banu Asrar, Tribunal of Redress, Case Number 281, Evidence Hearing Summary. The Tribunal of Redress gathered at approximately 2300 hours to discuss the evidence presented by Hanan al-Mog, tracker of the Banu Asrar, Lightstep. Hanan presented the evidence he discovered through official case notes, documentation, and interview transcripts. The consensus of his investigation is that there is no proof that Zumra is responsible for the poisoning and deaths of the refugees. There were no witnesses to see her within the kitchen, and the lintels were handled by many kinfolk before her. There is every possibility that someone else might have tampered with the food and left her to take the blame. That being said, he can neither prove her innocence. There is every possibility that this is some sort of conspiracy lodged by the Veiled Chamber, the people she is a high-ranking member of. Though there is no evidence to support that, and the Chamber claims that is not the case. After presenting the evidence, Hanan left the tribunal for the judges to deliberate. Judge Witness was the first to stand and give their verdict of not guilty under the premise of not having enough evidence to prosecute. Immediately following Judge Witness was Judge Equity, who disagreed. They stated that they should take the testimony of those who work closely with the refugees and see the actions of kinfolk like Zumra seriously. The other judges were in agreement with Judge Equity. Judge Redress stood and made the final verdict of guilty. Zumra is condemned to death by poison alongside her children. Journal of Kasha of the Adder's Hand, Scion of Justice. I slept on it. The more I thought about what I was getting myself involved with, the more worried I was getting. It's clear to me now that whoever is responsible for Hanan's death does not want something leaking about Zumra. The more I follow that trail, the deeper I'll find myself in a web that could potentially lead to my own demise. I'm smart enough to stay away from that. As much as I would love to follow the trail before me and try to figure out whichever hollowed member was responsible for this death, it would be of no use. I would simply paint a target on my back. So, in spite of all the chaos, the other's hand is still intent on retrieving the relics that Zumra had been gifted by refugees she helped. And as of now, reading everything that I have, I do feel confident in saying that she helps them. There has been no evidence against her. The only information that I've seen that could be used toward a guilty verdict is the word of the kinship and hollowed members. Right now, I'm less inclined to believe either of those given the recent information I've gained. If the hollowed are involved, could the kinship be too? And why is the hollowed involved? I have to stop myself. It's just so tempting. So instead of following this trail any longer, I'm trying to investigate more about Zumra. Her husband did not seem particularly willing to part with any of the relics she had in their home, and if I'm going to have trouble getting the ones from the Banu Asrar, perhaps there are more somewhere that I can obtain. That's why I went to visit some of her colleagues at the Veiled Chamber. If they truly did not like her, they might be eager to get rid of some of her belongings, regardless of whether or not they're relics. Shula was my contact within the chamber. Even though I went for the promise of relics, I couldn't deny the allure of asking her about Zumra. There was still the possibility that there was some sort of chamber cover-up, and they decided to use Zumra as a scapegoat. They already did not like her. It wouldn't be hard to blame her for something they did. But as I started talking to Shula, I did not get the sense they were involved. I started out being kind to her. The chamber is notoriously tight-lipped, but Shula seemed to be different. She's much younger than a lot of the other chamber members I've encountered. No doubt a new recruit into the people. When I finally got up the courage to ask her about Zumra, she told me what I already knew. Zumra was not liked. It was not because of her personality or saying anything abrasive to rub them the wrong way, but she was progressive. She thought that every opinion was valuable, every thought was worthwhile. That does not happen to be the sentiment of all of the other Veiled Chamber members. Toward the end of our conversation, I worked up the courage to ask her if I could see her office if it was still intact. She was hesitant, but there is almost nothing in this world the promise of a favor can't get you. Shula might seem nice, but I could have made a deal with the devil for all I know. Who knows when she'll call on me to answer that? She left me alone in the office for 10 minutes. I tore it apart. I found no relics, but oh did I find something valuable. Hidden in her desk, folded half a dozen times and stashed in a tiny crevice of a hidden compartment was a sheet of paper. It was something Zumra took great care to hide, something she did not want anyone to see. I put it in my pocket immediately and walked out. Whatever it is, I know it might just have the answers I'm looking for. Note from Zumra's desk. I don't know what's become of this city. Seeing just how little kinfolk care about others is disheartening. Strange things are happening every day. Kinfolk are disappearing. Our lands being ripped away from us through the third signs of the old gods. And now there are kinfolk traveling out to dying lands and telling others to stay. This is incredibly harmful. That doesn't begin to describe the fear I have. How many kinfolk in these tribes are going to die because they listen to the words of these crazed individuals? And for what? I can't make any sense of why they would tell kinfolk to stay behind. What breaks my heart the most is that I fear it might be working. Zahra sees plenty of refugees seeking shelter here every week. Perhaps none of the upper class of our city notice as much as I do. They tend to want to avoid them. Pretend they don't exist like it will somehow make them disappear. But I see the numbers coming into Zahra are dwindling, and that's not due to lack of infections throughout the world. I've spoken to the refugees about this several times. They give the same information each time. Kinfolk in plain robes, speaking cryptically, telling them that there's more honor in dying with their homes than fleeing and being a burden somewhere else. The information wasn't enough. I needed to know more. I tried to speak to Simeon about it. Whatever's happening is dangerous. It might not affect the kinfolk the Veiled Chamber are more interested in protecting, but I have a bad feeling about it. I wanted to send an expedition to one of the tribes to investigate more. The chamber has plenty of resources. Funding a group of kinfolk to go out would cost virtually nothing from our coffers. Yet I was told it was an expense we could not afford. No matter who I went to, no matter how hard I argued, nobody agreed to help. So I ended up funding it myself. It was not an officially sanctioned expedition by any means. I don't know why, but I just had a feeling that I needed to keep it a secret. Whoever is telling these refugees to stay behind is dangerous in my eyes. The last thing I needed was them coming after me. The expedition returned, all intact thankfully, but the news they gave me is frightening. They went to visit the Barak tribe. Members of this tribe came to Zahra months before. The third signs of the old gods visited their lands and they left before it took them. However, they had received the visitors all the other tribes had. Some of them, the proud few they were, agreed with what these kinfolk were spewing out to them. They loved their lands and they did not want to have to acclimate to Zahra, so they stayed behind. By the time the expedition arrived, everyone was dead. And according to their accounts, it did not look like they died from the infection. It had not been long either. They could see that the bodies were emaciated, like they had not eaten in weeks if not months. They used every ability they could to figure out what happened. Through their own uses of grammaturgy and forensic occultism, they gave me the story of what they think happened. First and foremost, they found very strange signatures of arcana. Things they had not seen before in Zahra or any of the other lands they've traveled to for expeditions. They found markings etched into stone nearby, a rising sun with a storm in the background and a book on the front. It's not an emblem that I know of. They found glyphs painted along temples, carved into the dirt so deeply no amount of wind could feel the gaps. The glyphs seemed to be some sort of a target, like a beacon, one of them said. I think the most terrifying part of their information was the glyphs they discovered scratched onto the arms and backs of the kinfolk. The glyphs starved them. Its purpose is to take away hunger. The original glyph was used by members of the kinship of the Chimes of Harmony for hunger rituals, and soldiers to keep them pushing forward during wartime. But it was twisted so the tribesmen simply could not eat. So all of them starved to death because of it. I just can't wrap my head around why someone would do that. I wanted to know who would be responsible for this. Thankfully, they had an answer. Though I'm not sure it actually provides much for me at this point. They were able to find evidence on the scene that they could link back to someone else who was at the site of the massacre, which I have decided is the only word to describe this atrocity. They used it to create a humoric resonance profile. The name they uncovered was Theory of the Heirs of the New Dawn, Dawn Walker. I've never heard of these people before, but I know they're dangerous, and I think they might be behind a lot more in this city than we realize. Journal of Kasha of the Adder's Hand, Scion of Justice. I had to read the note 3 times for it to make sense. The Heirs of the New Dawn? I attend every single symposium Idris gives. I've heard him talk about similar things. This revelation that I've discovered could be the answer to what happened with the refugees. Could the members of these people have been onto Zumra? Whoever this theory is could be a very dangerous person. I don't know what to do with this information exactly. Who can I trust right now? I am confident that some kinfolk framed Zumra. And if I had to guess, it would be someone from these Heirs of the New Dawn. But then why is Hanan dead? As far as I am aware, he did not know anything about these people. Unless he discovered something along the way. And that could put me in significant danger. As much as I want to abandon this and burn every piece of evidence I found, I just can't do that. If what Zumra has discovered is accurate, then there are very dangerous kinfolk out there who are going to cause a lot of harm. On top of that, Zumra's name has been slandered. There are songs about her, calling her cruel and manipulative when that does not seem to be the case. I have to do something with it. I can't just let this go ignored. I have an idea, and it might be one of the most foolish things I'll ever do in my life. But if the journals of Hanan are to be believed, there might be someone I can go to that believes Zumra's innocence. They might believe everything I've uncovered. Banu Asrar Tribunal of Redress, case number 281, emergency hearing. The Tribunal of Redress gathered to debate the verdict against one Zumra of the Veiled Chamber, Mother of Quiet Doors, wife of Mardin Lantern Keeper. This emergency hearing was called for by Judge Witness to debate the folly of accusing a woman of a crime there is no evidence she committed. In fact, new evidence has been presented through an undisclosed source. Journals from tracker Hanan Al-Mag Lightstep, as well as notes found in the desk of Zumra's office, have unveiled new information. There is a new people burgeoning in the city, the Heirs of the New Dawn. That people is responsible for the deaths of Barak tribesmen. The very same kinfolk could be aware that Zumra knew about them. That gives every motive to frame her. It is Judge Witness's testimony that this is the strongest evidence they have of wrongdoing against the refugees. Zumra had no motive to harm them, but the Heirs of the New Dawn had every motive to frame her. It is Judge Witness's opinion that the tribunal made a grave error and punished an innocent, kind person. Judge Witness moves to correct this error. They need to warn others about these new people and clear Zumra's name because she does not deserve the slander she has gained in her death. Judge Redress refuses. Their opinion is that in telling the rest of the city they made a mistake, it will only weaken them. The tribunal's every move will be questioned in the future. They're not in a position to be afforded that luxury. Judge Equity is in agreement. Judge Witness attempts to argue, but there was quickly silenced by Judge Equity. In a fit of rage, Judge Witness stormed out of the tribunal, leaving the other judges alone. In Judge Witness's absence, Judge Redress called for a movement to protect the council and remove Judge Witness from their position. It is agreed by all. Journal of Kasha of the Other's Hand, Scion of Justice. The news of Judge Witness being killed hit me hard. They were the one who I was promised would share this news. I believed that this could be the end of the Heirs of the New Dawn and justice for all of the kinfolk that have been wronged by them. But clearly I was mistaken. I don't know what to do now. I don't think there is a person in this city I can trust. This new people seems to have sprouted from nothing, and I know there must be operatives around us. How else can they know the things they do? Do they already know that I am onto them? Do they know that I've spread the name of their people into the Banu Asrar? If they do, I might as well have poured the soil over my own head. I know that Zumra was framed. The heirs of the New Dawn saw her as a liability. I don't know how they even knew about her, but whatever this arcana they used at the Barak tribe is unknown to me. There has to be more than that. I've spent days trying to piece together what Judge Witness's death means. I know that if I don't do something with this information fast, he could die with me. And that means there might be one person in this whole city who I can give it to that is untouchable. Idris. If the information is in his hands, I know he'll share it. He's already concerned about the heirs of the New Dawn. And as an added bonus, if he shares it with everyone, they won't be able to target only me. It might be my last hope. I just hope it does not backfire on me. Well, for all of you wondering, the lovely kinfolk standing right at the front of the stage here is the very one who brought me these journals, and she was right to be afraid. These people might have power we cannot even imagine right now. To starve an entire tribe through glyphs, use their abilities to choose areas that might be targeted by infection is beyond anything we understand. And as of right now, I am of the belief that Zumra was wrongly accused. She was targeted because of her knowledge, and the heirs of the New Dawn saw her as a threat. But in spite of the fear I feel deep in my chest, I feel sadness more than anything. How could a people that has spouted for decades that they are here to protect all of us, regardless of creed, find someone guilty with no evidence? If that can happen to her, it can happen to any of us. It's a true shame that not only Zumra had to die, but her family, and a judge who was clearly thinking about true justice, not furthering their own agenda. I should like to speak to members of the Circle of 1,000 Treads to see if they foresee dark times ahead the same way I do, but I have a very bad feeling. The heirs of the New Dawn are not going to be easy to learn about, especially not after this. But if there is one thing I can promise you all here today, in a world where truly nothing is promised, it's that I will do everything I can to bring you the truth.
This account is now entered into the record of the Hall of Echoes. Some of what you have heard tonight is confirmed, some remains disputed. All of it has been preserved because silence too alters the future. The Hall of Echoes continues its work through those willing to support the preservation of testimony, field reports, and recovered records from lands already sleeping beyond reach. Those who wish to patronage future reports may do so through the library's public ledger at patreon.com/Echoes of Aporia. And if this account proves worth remembering, carry it with you. Speak it clearly. Repeat it faithfully where knowledge is needed. The Hall exists so that truth may travel further than silence. I am Idris Nahir, Keeper of Echoes for the Library of Zahra.
No return, no great stay, no new homes where third sides play, no great heroes, no last stand. Leave the place, take who you can. First you watch and second you go. Third you never choose to know. The world warns soft before it screams. It eats the bold who miss the seams. Those who listen live and tell songs of places that fell to hell.